everyone. Welcome back to the Growing Together podcast with me, Sunny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
A podcast where we talk about everything under the sun related to growth and becoming the best version of yourself. So excited for another episode. This is episode 30, which is absolutely insane. I wanted to bring up today that I was looking through my old receipts and I saw the receipt because Caesar was asking me how much my camera was because he was making a video on cameras the other day. And I came across like the receipt on Best Buy where I bought like all of our podcasting equipment. And I bought this podcasting equipment in April of 2021. And we didn't start this podcast until
I think it was
this year in I want to say it was May. It was April or May.
Yeah.
And a lot of it had to do with just like, us being scared and
also too like just not having a solid idea what we wanted
not
to do.
even just not a solid idea. It's just like there was so much going on in our
too.
lives that we made excuses for like as to why we couldn't do it or like why we were gonna wait, and like we just waited until finally one day we're like, okay, we're gonna do it. You can see there's a Christmas tree in our background. I love Christmas. And the ornaments actually represent me and my friends, like Spider-Man and Yoda. They're all different ones. We all picked out our own ornaments when I lived in my little college town. They represent us.
Back to the Future. The little carve there is mine.
Oh, yeah, it is. I forgot.
Yeah.
And then Chewbacca's me, because I love Chewbacca. But yeah, how are you feeling today? We're doing this podcast a little bit later in the day because I was not feeling too hot this morning.
Yeah, no, I'm feeling pretty good. Feel well rested. I feel well rested. Can't even speak right now, but yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to today's topic, which I have no idea what it's about because Sunny had planned it, and I'm just now going.
I feel like Caesar never knows what they're about anyway.
No, I do.
I could tell him what they were about, but he wouldn't remember by the time we did it. I feel he'd be like, "Oh, what are we talking about again?" So
maybe that's true.
Anyway, today though, I was feeling so exhausted this morning. We woke up pretty late anyway, like at 10 a.m. and then I made some waffles because I love a good waffle with our little tiny waffle maker, and then told Caesar, I was like, I'm still so exhausted. I was feeling like so under the weather, and not like sick as in like I'm coughing or like sneezing. I just felt like like so not me. And so Caesar and I went to lay down back in bed, and I felt like so bad for it because I always feel this need to be so productive.
Yeah.
And there's something called toxic productivity, and that's what I want to talk about today.
Okay.
And the definition, I'm just going to read here from my notes. So if you're watching YouTube and I'm looking down, it's because I'm reading from my notes just to make sure I get it right. The definition of toxic productivity is the constant need to do negatively impacts your physical, mental, and emotional health. And I think it's so funny because I think toxic productivity is literally just hustle culture. Like the idea that you have to be going 24/7, 365, or you're going to be a failure. Like, do you know what I'm talking about? Have you experienced that?
I mean, this is the first time I've ever heard of it put this way, toxic productivity. I can definitely
hustle
understand.
culture,
Yeah.
like I'm asking, like, have you experienced that?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of it. Have I experienced it? I don't think so. I mean, I don't feel like I have, but maybe I have. I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, for years I felt like I always needed to do something. So if that's what that is, then I guess I have. I mean, I always feel like I need to be on top of things. So like if I'm sitting down doing nothing, like I don't play a lot of video games at all. Like I'm not.
But I think that's the thing is like that's part of it. Like obviously, like yes, we need to be productive in our daily lives. There's also things that we have to do. Like we need to work to provide for ourselves.
Yep.
So there's things that we have to do as just human beings in order to survive. But when it comes to like the role toxic productivity plays in our lives, it's that the idea that if you're someone who enjoys to play video games when everything else is done, that's a waste of time. there's some people I know that in like personally that I've had in my life where like if you're not spending every waking moment that you're not like working, doing something that's productive towards your life, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And that's like kind of a toxic mentality because as humans, we need a break. We need a break. We need, rest from this, like constantly having to output something to, you get what I mean?
I mean, yeah, I understand that. I guess my only thing I would say is, what if it's someone who's looking to change into a different career and has to like put in like 6 or 8 months of just constant like learning and work in order to like transition over into like a different field, and that requires them to be constantly productive, like
I'm not saying that you shouldn't be
a boot camp
productive.
or something
No,
like that,
but even then, there should be time within that where you can, like, you're not working 24 hours a day on that. There's time that you
Yeah.
can spend to yourself to feel like if you do, like, at that rate, all you do is work towards XYZ, you will burn out. All you ever do is work, 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 work. And I don't think that like it's bad to be productive. I'm not saying that like you shouldn't be productive. And there are cases where you need to really step it up to get to where you want to be. But I do think within all of that, no matter what you're trying to do, there is balance and you just have to find it, because the road to just always trying to be better and always trying to be productive really does lead to burnout. And then it becomes unproductive. When you're so burnt out, you actually become more unproductive than you are.
Yeah, because you're not going to be
Because you're not
all
performing
there.
at 100.
Yeah.
You're not all there. And I think a lot of times people equate not being productive every moment of the day with being lazy. Like, oh, that person's so lazy. But at the end of the day, like, if you're looking at someone else's life, you're on the outside looking in. You don't know what they're dealing with. You don't know what they do in their free time. You only know what you see. So for one, you can't really make that assumption. But I think that we kind of live in a culture just thrives on this concept of toxic productivity, and that individuals feel the need to be productive at all waking moments of the day. And I thought of this topic too because I was actually, your brother Noah sends me a bunch of Instagram reels throughout the day, and me and him send reels back and forth. And there was this one that he sent me today that was Finland, and it has like what Americans think the 4-day work week is like in Finland. And it's like this meme about like how easy and like simple it is. And that's probably not the case, and the guy was from Finland. And I told Noah I forgot what I said exactly to him, but I was saying I'm not against the 4-day work week, but the 4-day work week stresses me out because I'd have to get all my work done in 4 days, and I already have so much work that's cramming into 4 days would be a lot. And he was like, it has to do with like Finland has a different idea of like work-life balance, whereas here we're go, 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 go. And I was like, yeah, like that's right. I was like, we have a kind of like this hustle culture of like where you just need to go, go, go. And like we can identify it, but nothing changes.
Yeah, again, I think a lot of it has to do obviously where you work.
I don't think it's just, I think it's society
also,
as a whole though.
I mean, that too, that's part of it. Especially obviously like the different businesses and companies, technology, all that stuff that's continuing to emerge. Obviously not just in America, but in other countries too.
But every country, that's kind of what I'm trying to pinpoint, is that every country has kind of a different culture, and they see even things such as like work differently than what we do here in the United States. And like in Finland, for example, they don't have the same culture where you have to go, go, go. But yet things are still getting done. But I think here in the United States, we have this concept that like if we don't push people to their absolute like what feels like their breaking point, the companies won't benefit as much, and they'll just think people are lazy. In short, like not the best explanation, but that's kind of how it seems. I mean, haven't you worked for companies where it's like you can tell I'm just a number and they're gonna get as much out of me as they want,
I mean, yeah, I have. I can honestly say that as a fact. But I guess coming from this is a difficult question for me to answer in regards to like I understand that definition, right?
Yeah.
And I can understand that there can be scenarios where someone is, it is toxic for them in the sense like they're burnt out. Maybe they're even like not all there with their family, whatever the case is, right?
Yeah.
Because it ends up affecting you everywhere, right? I
Yeah.
imagine. But I feel like it's not all the time is it just work. It could also be other things that are they think are productive, but it has nothing to do with work. Maybe it has to do with something to do on the side or whatever the case is. That's also leading
No,
to that. But
no, I don't think
yeah.
everything. I think toxic productivity like affects all areas of life. Like I was saying, like I posted a Instagram story on our Growing Together podcast like page this week, and it was yesterday, and I was laying down in bed, and I said I was like, here's the thing is I have such a contradicting personality in that right now I'm laying down and I know that I deserve rest, but at the same time I'm kicking myself thinking I need to be doing something right now. Like doing something with this time because I don't get this time
I
all
get
of the
that,
time.
and I feel that too.
And
So I don't like
but that's
laying down.
but that's stressful
Yeah.
because at the same time I should be able to rest and enjoy myself because also there won't be as much time to rest either. So I feel like I'm fighting these battles in my head of like, should I take this time to rest and like recharge because I don't really get that time? Or should I take this time to work on a personal project that I also want to do? And it's two things I want to do because I'm chronically exhausted, but I also really want to work towards something greater. And there needs to be a better balance, and I think right now there's not really balance. And I don't put it all on companies, I do think some companies try to create really great cultures where they try not to like push you over the edge, but the first example that comes to mind is Elon Musk and Twitter right now.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like he said, like if you don't want to like do X, Y, and Z, like basically, you put in your resignation. And I think also it's like you're not considering that these people are human. Like they have lives, they have families, they have like the reason they work there is probably because they were talented and they have goals of their own and stuff, but we also shouldn't be asking people to sacrifice every waking moment of their day for a corporation, at the end of the day, because if you die, they'll replace you tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I remember us talking about that in general in regards to just what companies look for. However, I would say that if someone, just what do you call it? From a different perspective, right? If I was into technology, like if I knew coding, if I had a different life, and because there's people that love to like be a part of those types of organizations, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, and I mean obviously Instagram's owned by Facebook or all these other big technology companies that they want to be like in there in like whether it's doing the front end or the back end coding, and they want to be a part of that they would like sacrifice relationships
but
or not
do you
being
know
in
why that
relationships.
is though? It's because we put so much fucking like status towards working at those kind of companies.
Oh no, that's what I was trying to. I was gonna get to that in a second, but what I was gonna say was that I can understand why people would want to be a part of it because again, it is a status thing. It is wanting to be like, oh look, I'm a part of this company that everyone knows about or whatever the case is, right? It's like oh Facebook or whatever the case is. But what I was gonna say was if I lived a different life and I went down a different route, I would probably end up finding myself probably wanting to work there because that's the type of, not to say like, again, you're talking about it from a toxic productivity standpoint, but there's people that want to do something that's bigger than themselves.
You can do something bigger than yourself and also have clear boundaries when it comes to your work and it comes to like you also having a life outside of it. Because at the end of the day, like, what do you have to show for it if you have nothing else besides that job? Nothing.
That's a good point. Yeah, that is a really good point.
You didn't foster like I think a huge part of life, like yes, we all want to be successful. I want to build something someday, and I also know that it's gonna include an insane amount of work, but at the end of the day, that's not the only thing I want. I want to create relationships. And I think it kind of gives this idea of like, can you truly have it all? Because some people make it seem like you have to choose, you have to choose your career or having a family. And I don't think it has to be that way, but we've really shaped it to be like where we have to make these choices and that we can't have like a balance between all of the things, like between relationships, like travel, work. It seems like oftentimes we're choosing, like right now, like in our lives, we're choosing, to obviously I have my job and I'm choosing that not just because I love my job and I very like I'm the type of person that just always needs to be doing something, but I'm choosing that also because I need to survive, like, and I can't really choose like travel or the other things right now because I
Yeah.
don't have the means to, but it seems like that's a position that a lot of people are in. And yeah, like I think that it's funny when we talk about like specifically like with businesses who like make these decisions, like, Elon Musk just took over Twitter, that people are like, well, you have to see it from like a business standpoint. I'm like, when are we going to start seeing this also from like a fact that we're all humans, and like just because like one person wants to function that way doesn't mean that we should make everyone function that way. It reminds me of when I was at Target and little like nickel in the
Target jar.
Yeah, because Target comes up when I worked there. I can't speak on it now. But when I worked there, they had standards like
Like every company, right?
yeah, standards of like how fast, like if you get a truck, everyone on your team should be able to push, like the standard is 50 boxes an hour, like should be like pushed. And so they base the workload of the truck, like if you have a 1,300 piece truck, they'll tell you how long it should take to like get it done, right, essentially. And that's actually a pretty tiny truck for a Target. It's like 1,300 pieces. But they don't take into consideration like the guest traffic that's in the store, how like often team members have to go and do backup at the registers when it gets busy. They don't take into account a lot of different things that also the team members have to do.
Yeah.
And so it really isn't an accurate like understanding of how long it should take, but we also had to hold like these team members to the standards, and I felt bad because I'm like, this just isn't possible. Like I was pretty good, like when I used to push truck when I was a team member, like I was pretty fast and I was pretty efficient, but even then I'm like, I don't think I could do it with some of the trucks that we had. And I felt so bad because I'm like, the people making these decisions aren't the ones here having to push like a 2,000, 3,000 piece truck, and when it didn't get done, it was like, why didn't it get done? It's like, well, let me tell you how the night went. Okay, there were a million freaking guests that need help, like so many things, right?
Issues that occurred,
because they also
that, yeah.
Target wants the truck to get done, right? But they also want the guest experience to be immaculate. And like, well, if we have our team on the floor also focusing on making the guest experience and answering every single guest question, that's going to add up to a lot of time too. And then they're not pushing truck, and like
staying away from the from what they were tasked to do. No, I understand that, and I think, like I said, like every business and company out there has different standards they set, and when it's different when someone buys the company out and they change everything right from the ground up or whatever the case is. But that's why I'm saying, like, I know you've even said it yourself, like you understand where companies come from, but at the same time you also need to understand where the people are coming from. So it's like
people
like a
are
balance.
people are the backbone of companies.
Yeah, well,
like, for the most part, unless you have a completely like company that's just managed by robots at this point.
Yeah, AI or whatever the case is.
But people
automation.
are the backbone of companies, and yet we take such advantage of people, and that really, like, that just really irritates me because I don't know how you can expect people to do what you're asking them sometimes, but I think we also just live in a culture where that's been normalized for years, so people don't even realize. I think at some points people don't even realize what they're doing, and now I think when we come to this understanding that people are now saying, like, this isn't good for your health, like your mental health, your physical health at times too, like we're having this conversation about it, but how much will change, how much will companies actually change to accommodate for the fact that like we need, like, life is meant to be lived, and to feel like you're living. And I think with this idea of being productive 24/7, you can often feel like you're not living. I know I had a conversation with my mom a little bit ago, and I said, like, I'm not living. And she was like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I'm not living. I was like, I don't feel like I'm living. I was like, I am just surviving day to day. And that's a shitty feeling to have. of like just surviving. And granted, mine isn't just because of like toxic productivity in my own life, because I just have this need to always go, go, go. But it's also just because of like other scenarios too. But I think that I do feel very lazy when I take any time to myself. Like, if it's not like I have to be like, okay, well, if I'm going to spend this time, I should like read something, or I should, work on something that I've been wanting to work on. And it's just like, it's like, remember how I was telling you, I was like, I hate when you get out of bed early, because then I feel like I need to get out of bed.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. Like, you got out of bed like at 7 a.m. yesterday, and I was like, damn, I have to get up now.
I mean, if it was, again, that's a different that's a different topic of conversation. But I was gonna say was, I feel like it's a human thing, and hear me out real quick before you respond. I think because like, for like a long time, we, not like me myself, but our, grandparents, like lived in, whether it was in rural places before they lived in the cities, right? Or in the cities are what, kind of like the industrial revolution, especially in the US or in other countries, kind of like made it where like you got to work or to survive. Kids were working. Like there's this video I saw of like some antiquated film that was converted over into 60 frames per second, and they upscaled it to 4K, and like you can see these kids like that are all dressed up like, like 30s clothes or 19, I don't even know what year it was, but and they were working, like they were like kids.
Well, there's a reason kids
yeah,
don't work
kids,
anymore.
I mean, yeah, there's like, yeah, obviously that's what I'm saying, is that I'm like, dang, like these kids were literally working in the city or wherever this video was from. I'm gonna put it up in this podcast if you guys are watching it, and it just blew my mind. But where I was going with that is that I feel like it's kind of like built into us because of it is a survival thing. Like let's say like me and you had a homestead out in the middle of, I don't know, Montana. I don't know, it's just some random a backwood country place where we needed to survive. And in order for us to survive, was we had to go and out like either like tend our chickens, I don't know, and we that required you to constantly work. Like to have a farm, you have to constantly work on it. Like it's not like
I'm gonna tell you something right now,
like
Caesar.
yeah.
In that environment, I'm not surviving because I wasn't made for that. And but I get what you're saying.
What I'm saying.
I was thinking about, but when you mentioned that, I was thinking about how I was watching that video game story of The Last of Us.
Oh yeah.
And I was like talking to Spencer about it because I was watching it with him, and I said, like, in this scenario, I'm not surviving.
Yeah, some people wouldn't survive.
Kill me. Like, it's not going to work out for me.
Survive.
But it's not, I don't think, the thing is, when you think, like, some people wouldn't survive, it's not even that they don't have, like, a way to live or, like, the wanting to. It's just that, like, we're built differently, and I'm not built for that. And I think that's the...
I mean, that's a part also of the business aspect of it, because there's some people that are built to... in the sense of like constantly work, and that fit this characterization of a toxic productivity, but they like that, they live in that. That's like they get like a high.
To be honest, if you could tell me like if people actually liked it, I think that they're so accustomed to it that they don't know that they don't.
That too.
I don't think that like people who actually like are working like day in and day out, like, and not getting a break. Like if you're asking, especially for instance, like take away from someone who's like let's not even say like like of like not like take it from like someone who, like, for instance, your dad.
Yeah.
You think your dad wouldn't rather like...
He would rather be working on his farm in Mexico.
Yeah, but like he works in construction in the summer. You think in the summer he's feeling like, yeah, I want to do this all day long. No, he doesn't. No, but that's what I'm saying. But he does because you have to. And I get that. I get the point. Like, you have to. But I think some people would like, yeah, I'm okay with this because we don't have any other option but to do this. So I think when it comes to toxic productivity, you might ask people that say, yeah, no, I love it. I love to like hustle. But at the end of the day, like, I think the other thing that you have to consider is oftentimes we busy ourselves so we don't have to focus on other problems. That too. That's a part of it. So, like where you keep yourself busy to avoid the real things, the real issues that you're having. And I was reading the book, The Mountain Is You, and it's pretty good. But it had me like having so many realizations yesterday. But it talks about like we busy ourselves a lot, and like it's down to like, for instance, I can't like work without listening to something. Like it's almost like I don't want to hear the thoughts inside my head, you know. And like Noah made a joke about it to me too with like this reel he sent me, and it's true. It's like we want to busy ourselves so we don't have to focus on the ugly parts of our lives or the things that we just really don't feel like dealing with right now. And I think being productive in other areas helps us do that, because we can feel good about like what we're doing and not slow down enough to actually think about what's going on and think about the things we want to change, because if we don't think about them, we don't have to change them. And I feel like I'm guilty of that for sure.
I know I'm guilty of that too. I'm pretty sure a lot of people listening to this right now understand that it's again, it's like we're hiding the pain. We don't want to deal with the pain.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's something you need to physically change because it's a health issue, or it's, you know, fill in the blank. You know, like, mental.
That's the
like,
thing is
that,
like,
right?
I think toxic productivity within ourselves of like, even if it's not happening in your work environment, right? Or like, it's just something inside of you. Like, I think sometimes it is like, I have that type of personality where I was kind of raised to feel like you need to produce. So like when I'm not producing, I feel bad. It's a way of like sabotage too. Yeah. Like, you know, like for instance, I was thinking about it in like all different ways I'm probably self-sabotaging in my life. And something is like, we used to run a lot and I really liked running. And every Monday I wake up, every Monday, like when we start in the week, I'm like, oh, we're going to go on a run tomorrow. We're going to go on a jog tomorrow. And we don't. And you got to think back to like, why aren't you? Like, what's keeping you? A lot of times, like, you'll make excuses for yourself about like why you can't do something. And I think I
think a lot of it has to do with exactly what you said, though. It's the why. For me, when I was in that zone for years of constantly running, there was the big why. Like, Caesar, why are you doing this? And that big why was enough for me to get up every morning, take a cold shower every morning. Well, obviously after I ran, and then go to work. And then I would come back from work and then work. I would be working on things in the garage back when I used to create those bags and whatnot for Revive, and then all over again. There was a bigger purpose for me to be doing those things that made me do that. So when you don't, at least from my perspective, when I feel like when I don't have that big why, it can, or there's other issues and problems that can affect why you don't get up in the morning at 5 o'clock in the morning anymore, Caesar. I'm talking to myself. Then that's like one of the reasons why you don't do that. You know, maybe the why isn't there, or there's other issues too as well, you know. But
it's not just like not having a why. Like, you may have like a why of like why you want to do something, but actually going after, like, that's what I'm talking about, is like we often sabotage ourselves from like not pursuing what we want to do, or like they put it in the book that I was reading, they put it in the perspective of like, for instance, if you grew up hearing like people who are rich are just awful people, who have money who are just awful people, you will often sabotage yourself and your like chances of getting that kind of wealth, you know, because of how you see it. And I think a lot of times like it factors into just other areas of our life and other things we want to do, is like we'll sabotage the end goal because of what we're scared of. Like, it also had like a metaphor of like, if you're a passenger in the car and you get really nervous, as I do, maybe it's like that you're scared of the lack of control, and like, you know, it gives you anxiety and
you want control.
And so we often also project the things we worry about usually are things that aren't gonna happen, but this is gonna be so like, this doesn't make sense, but it does. Often, like, I felt this so like hard to my core. We let ourselves worry about things that we know probably won't happen because they're safer to worry about than the things that might actually happen. It's crazy. And I was like, that's actually true, because a lot of things that I'm worried about, like,
aren't things that aren't probably gonna happen.
Or even like things that like, it goes back to like self-sabotage. Like, I'm worried that I'll never be successful, and like, is that worry going to cause me to never actually pursue success? Like, I think about like a lot of times when you're taking a new step in your life, it's uncomfortable, and because it's uncomfortable, we don't do it, and that's us self-sabotaging because we want to be where it's comfortable. And yeah, it's just crazy. There's just so much like in that book. I think the other part of it is that I think productivity is subjective.
I mean, yeah, elaborate. Yeah, no, I mean, elaborate, because I don't know about that. I mean, yeah.
Because like, if I told you, like, for instance, like on Monday morning, Monday evening, I'm telling you everything I did today, and say I'm like listing, I did this many briefs, I answered this many emails, I did this many reports, and then like at the end of the day, I was like, and you're like, well, that sounds like you had a super productive day. But someone who works within my organization might actually be like, well, actually, like, I'm surprised you didn't get more done because like this should have taken this much time. So like,
okay.
I think it's like subjective in what we consider productive. Like, for instance, like when I worked at Target, there were a ton of nights where I was like, man, we got so much done, and yet it wasn't enough. It wasn't as productive as they wanted it to be.
It wasn't the standard. Like, I mean, not to say you hit the standard, but you did what you needed to do. But then there was still like you could have done more. Like, why didn't this get done? I know you were telling me about like truck or whatever it was, and used to work at Target, and like you guys would get a lot done, but then the next day to be like, well, why is this way? It's like, it's never gonna be perfect.
But it's like, but that's what I'm saying is like productivity is like judged by like, whoever's judging, essentially, like whether it's your manager or like yourself. Like you might judge your productivity like differently than your manager does, but eventually you might align on like what productive is, and it changes how you see what productivity is. Like the way we see productivity can be shaped by so many different things.
No, it's true. I mean, okay, now I see what you mean by that. That's why I was like, wait, well, I guess like if there's a standard you set, and that was the whole thing you're talking about, is that you could then. No, doesn't have to be subjective. It can be objective based on a standard.
I don't agree with that though. I think even if there's a standard, it's very subjective because it's someone else telling you what they think. Oftentimes, I won't say this as all times, sometimes standards are set based on like actual metrics and like data and like, or like, but a lot of times, again, standards don't account for everything else, that's maybe in your role. So there might be a standard of like how long something should take you, but it's not considering everything else you have to deal with. So like I just think standards sometimes are subjective as well, so therefore productivity still is subjective within most places because there's also bias. Like there's going to be bias on like what people think is productive and not.
No, that's true.
At the end of the day, like it's always going to happen.
No, that's it's funny that you bring that up though, and this thought came to my mind. Is that it is definitely subjective, and I can say again, and this would simplify it for a lot of people out there, is that if you have a farmer who's only farmed, I bring it back to farming, because without farmers we wouldn't have food, and that's what I think is like a lot of people don't realize that like we would literally
this
not
channel
have food.
Is a supporter of all farmers.
I mean, support your local farmers and whatnot, but if you had a farmer that like lived on somewhere, and all they did was farm potatoes, right? They had a factory, but they had machinery and all that, and that's all they did for a living. And then they traveled to Silicon Valley and saw what someone in Silicon Valley is doing and how much they're getting paid. I really do think there'd be a revolution, because it'd be like all they're doing is sitting on a computer typing a bunch of numbers, and they get paid that much, and I'm over here like producing 20 tons of potatoes and crop field and all these things. Like that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm saying is I think it definitely, in this case, it would definitely be subjective, because that farmer would be like, that person is not being productive. Like I'm over here producing food, and then they're over here typing a bunch of code into his computer. And what's it doing? Like what is Twitter doing? What is Instagram doing? What is Facebook doing?
But it's funny too that you bring that up. I think that brings up a conversation, and maybe we'll do a podcast on this, because I don't know how related it is to like growth. But the value we tie to certain like positions, when you think about how much like some people are making, like their jobs are super important. I will say that, like, but you're also like, damn, like you can really see where we tie value to in certain positions, like how much people make, which I think, is fair. Like a lot of people are working hard for those jobs. So also when you talk about Silicon Valley and like, you know, even just like
Don't get me wrong.
cities in
there's
general,
stuff,
they're expensive.
Yeah.
So you
That's the
gotta
cost of
account for
living,
that
all
too.
of that.
So,
I know.
like,
I understand that. We live in a city, so yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, I would think they'd be like, they're not being productive.
Like, what in
I
the
think
world?
too,
You
like,
know?
it's funny because you say that too, because people who think like there's like this idea of people who don't work from home, what they think work from home is, and like that you're not productive. But like my days are like packed, you know, like I'm working from home and like it's busy and I feel like I'm productive, but some people just think like you're like, yeah, you're just sitting at home and you're like, you can do whatever you want, but it's like, no, you really can't. Like if you want to keep your job, you can't. So yeah, I just think we need to kind of reshape what productivity like looks like in our lives, kind of set our own standards, if you will, you know, like less about what society is telling you is productive and more about what you feel is productive. And I think that's hard to do because we always are going to compare ourselves to like, or try to find something to compare ourselves to. So I think it's a difficult task at hand, but I do think that that's something I need to work on personally, is understanding like giving myself greater balance, not just work-life balance, but also like when it comes to allowing myself to rest and not feel guilty about it. Because that's like the worst thing. It almost feels like you're not resting when you're so worried
thinking about like,
about,
I could be doing this.
I could be
I
doing
could have done. You know, it's funny. It's like the whole time, like, you know, all this time that passed
the
by.
whole time that you were laying with me.
I got here. I'm like, damn, I could have finished editing my other video if I would have just, you know.
Caesar
like,
was like, because I
gosh.
asked him, I was like, can you just cuddle me? Because I was feeling so bad.
I thought you were sick. I was like, maybe she's sick.
No,
I
I do feel so bad like
Yeah.
right now. But I was like, I really do want to record this podcast too. This is just me being toxic, guys. Don't follow my like steps. No, I'm trying to be better. But there's also obviously there's things that we want to do, and like this podcast I want to do, which is why I was like, yeah, we'll record it today, because we could have recorded it tomorrow. But I also wanted tomorrow.
That allows me to edit it later tonight, and then not tomorrow morning, and then we get the shorts
but
out.
I asked Caesar.
Productivity.
Yeah, productivity. No, I asked Caesar when I was like not feeling good after we ate breakfast. I was like, can you just like cuddle me? And like, I felt like I was having a panic attack of like me being
Your
so
heart rate was,
exhausted that
really
like
high.
I was like panicking about how tired I was. And yeah, but like even then when I was like trying to fall back to sleep in hopes that I'd feel better, I was thinking about, man, what are we going to talk about on the podcast? Like, and thinking about all these things, and it can really make it so counterproductive of like trying to get your rest, you know, like trying to focus on the other things you need. And I think, overall that like being like overproductive or like having this toxic like mentality towards what productivity is for you can really impact every other part of your life. It can impact your emotional health, like your physical health. Like sometimes I feel like I'm going crazy. I'm like, I am going insane. And also shape how you value yourself. You know, like we said, like we often tie a lot of value to our work, but we also usually tie a lot of value to how much we're producing in our own lives. Like, you know, some people tie value to being able to find a husband, or like tie value to how many miles they ran, or just how much they did. And it's such a bad way to think. I think that we should also like celebrate the little wins that we might not highlight. Like, hey, I got out of bed today on time. Or like, hey, I, you know, meal prepped, or I worked on something that I've been putting off, you know, like just those little wins mean a lot too, because sometimes it is really hard just to get that one thing done. It can be so difficult just to get that one thing that you should celebrate getting that one thing done, even if it felt like you should have done 10 things and you only got one thing. I still think it's always celebrating, but it's hard for us to celebrate ourselves, I think, when we have this mindset.
It is. It's hard. I'm telling you, at least I think it's just how we're built, you know.
I don't think it's how we're built. I think it's society. I think it's like, I don't think we were born that way. It's an environmental thing. I would argue. You can tell me in the comments if you think it's environmental or not, but I don't think anyone's born. I think people are born. Well, I don't know. That's a whole different conversation too. But I think when it comes to you growing and trying to figure out what you need in your life, that's something you need to recognize, is this long term is this sustainable? Because it comes to sustainability too. Like, how long can you actually sustain it and remain in good health and remain in good mental health? Like, it's not a sustainable model. And if you think about it in terms like businesses too, like if you had like a one person business, right? But you were having to work 80 hours a week, over time, that's not going to be sustainable because like technically you're making less money per hour because you're having to work 80 hours. So it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And I think that's something you need to think about is like how sustainable is a life you're currently living with the mindset that you currently have. And it's hard to recognize that it may not be sustainable because again, that makes you recognize I have to change something. And when we go to change something, it's just not great.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of, I'm really, really passionate about that because I struggle. Like I really do struggle with that. And it has me feeling, I don't know, like I often think about like, why am I so tired? And I feel like it could be so many things, but I think that's one thing is that I really just don't know how to slow down. And I think we all just need to slow down,
I think so too. Yeah.
There's relax,
slowing down. R&R.
R&R, some relaxation. And not, it's so funny because it's like my coworker like Slack messaged me on Thanksgiving. Oh, he's such a peach. I love him. He was like saying, I'm so grateful to work with you. And I was like, oh, I'm so grateful to work with you too. And he was like, I really hope you get rest this weekend. Like, I really do. And I was just like, yeah, me too. Because he just knows that I like am someone that just doesn't know how to like rest. Even here, I'm shaking because I'm just like,
I'm looking at my monitor. I was wondering why my monitor is moving around.
I know, it's just so bad.
Can you please be careful because if that monitor falls, it's the only one I have.
Yeah. No, you have another one, just small.
I know, but
I'd have to give you one of mine. But yeah, I think we really just need to kind of reevaluate how we're using our time, and it's okay for you to have time to yourself. Like, I think we think when people take time for themselves or time to relax, they're lazy, but like it's just human nature to need time to rest. And the thing is, like, we often talk about here, just as like a last closing thought, we often talk about how, well, in ancient times or in this times they had to do this. But now we're in a point in like society where we don't. We don't have to in order to function. Like there are other ways for us to function. So you bring up like, oh, the kids were working. It's like, well, back then, like that was okay. Obviously, now it's not because we figured out, hey, it's not a great thing to do.
Child labor laws.
Yeah, like there's child labor laws, and there's a reason that we like established this, and times change. And I think with times changing too, like we need to like establish like what that can look like. And I don't know that it will change globally, not globally, like or even just within the United States. I think that would take like some kind of like revolution. But I think that we can make a point in our own lives to take care of ourselves. I think that's the whole thing. Is that you need to take care of yourself. I will always understand that you have to do what you have to do in certain scenarios and to provide for yourself and to survive. But I think in order to feel like you're living, you need that kind of balance.
Yeah.
And I hope that you can work towards that balance. I'm working towards that balance every single day. It's not an easy journey. It's a lot of doubt and like, should I be doing more? Am I doing too much? But I know that we all can get there. This podcast has turned into like not just Caesar and I growing together, but us all, like everyone who listens growing together. Like not necessarily like together, like intertwining our lives, but like all growing at the same time. So yeah, we're happy if you made it to the end of the episode. We love doing this podcast, which is why we show up every week to do it. It's just something that I always want to talk about because I'm learning and growing and really trying to prioritize just myself and where I want to be and with Caesar as well, and trying to like help him as he helps me, and I want to help you guys if I can. So do you have anything else to say?
No, I feel like it's definitely one of those things where as long as we continue to create content around growth, which I feel like it's an infinite thing you can talk about because there's growth in all different aspects of life, business, relationships. we'll always continue to be there for you guys in hopes that maybe you can take something away from this, you know?
Yeah, I really just want someone to take something away from this. Like, I may be young, but I read a lot about this stuff, and I think that I'm sharing just like my experiences with you guys.
Yeah.
You know, like, just what I've experienced so far, and this is why we also want to bring more people on that can like motivate you, inspire you, help you through whatever you're going through right now. So this has been Growing Together with me, Sunny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
We hope to see you guys soon and listen our next podcast on Monday.
See you guys later.